You cannot expect different results if you do not change. That goes with emotionally, spiritually, physically, anything in life that you want to have results or have a change in your life. You have to do it yourself. At times, I think the easiest way that you can see change is physically. However, physical change is great if you need physical change. But emotional change is just as important because your inside is reflected on your outside. And sometimes your outside is reflected upon how you feel inside. And they kind of go back and forth. Because, for example, I always try to give examples just so it's like understandable and that I'm not just speaking out of my hat. So, when you imagine someone who is super stressed, you can see it in their body language, in their face, in the way that they present themselves, and just their overall health. And then sometimes when you see somebody who is going through it, you don't know it. And that is super hard. And so it's really a toss of a coin of, can you tell if somebody's like really anxious or depressed or stressed, or they're not, and they're really good at masking it. And going down to that masking part a little further, you can only mask your feelings for so long until they manifest themselves in your physical life. Not in a sense of, I want a car, and so I'm gonna get a car. Not that type of manifestation, but the unintentional manifestation. Because when we go through hard things, depending upon your person, the person that you are, you can shut down, you can become really aggressive, you can become very emotional. And sometimes it's a spectrum. Sometimes it's a range of how you react. And let's say that you shut down and then you just grind it through. How do you feel when you no longer have to be in that state? Super stressed. I have a blanket. It's cold. Do you feel super stressed? Do you feel like your world's on fire after you get out of that burning building? Or when you're maybe that middle person of that you explode on other people, how do you feel after having that outburst at someone, something, somewhere? Do you feel better? Do you feel worse that you exploded on somebody because you couldn't handle your emotions? Or are you somebody who's really emotional and that you can't hide your feelings, that you can't do that? And neither way of coping is the correct way. There's no right or wrong way of coping. And I know there's probably 1,000 more out there, the ways that you feel your emotions. Those are just the ones that I can think of off the top of my head. And depending upon what you want to work on, your outcome will be different. Because if you are the type of person to shut down and completely cut everything off and just grind it, sometimes that's a good thing because you can get your job done, you can get your work done, you can push through it, all these other things. But then what are you left with? Emptiness, loneliness, a feeling of what's the next adventure, like there's not enough. And then from another perspective, the middle person of outburst, outrage, putting it on somebody else, that is your way of your release. That is the way that you take out your emotions, that you finally open up that bottle. But then, what damage for a relationship, physical destruction, like different things like that, what has happened? What were the consequences? And then for somebody who's really emotional, you feel your feelings so deep. You wear your heart on your sleeve, and you have raw emotions that flow out. And it's a good thing that you don't bottle that up, that you don't let that weight get heavy. But then on the flip side, are those inopportune times? Is that when you don't want to have your emotions and they come out? And then that might affect your day, your job, your schooling, your friendships. It's a left side and a right side and then a middle. And then neither is right or wrong. It just is. And it's just a way that we cope. And each one has a benefit, like a pro to it. Then each one has a con. And trying to find that balance of being able to shut your emotions off, get the job done, but then feeling your emotions sometimes, and then being able to appropriately talk to somebody is hard. It really is. And I don't know a single person who hasn't figured out how to regulate their emotions perfectly, because emotions are not black and white. They aren't a yes or a no or an off or on. That emotions are kind of what bring the spice into your life, because when you shut down your emotions completely, you can't feel the bad, but nor can you feel the good. And then when you explode on people, you get all the things that you've been bottling up for so long, that you've held on to so tightly, and then you explode on somebody or something. And that is a way of letting go of things. However, is that done appropriately? And then for just feeling your emotions, are you letting your emotions drive your decisions, your thoughts, your day? Or are you still able to function and still make cohesive decisions without your emotions? And it's hard. And I say this coming from just change. Coming from the perspective of change. And that you can't stay one and expect to have different outcomes. Because like at the gym, you build muscle, you hurt, you are uncomfortable, you're sore. If you do bicep curls with usually 15 pounds and then you do 20 pounds, your biceps are going to be sore. And you feel it. You physically feel it in your bicep. And the same thing happens emotionally. That when you try to challenge the way that you cope and you want to change to try to become a more emotionally mature version of you, it hurts and it's hard. Because if you're somebody who bottles up their emotions all the time just to get through it, and then you're like, yo, let me feel my emotions, you're not gonna know how to react. You don't know how to deal with those emotions yet, because you're brand new to them, because you haven't let yourself feel them. And then, for example, if you are somebody who explodes on people is the only way that I can explain it, or you unload on people and then all of a sudden you try not to unload on people, then it's like you're holding in a bottle, but then you're slowly pouring it out, and you're trying to learn how to not dump your stuff on people, but slowly pour it on people in a nice fashion. That you're like, instead of being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe yada, 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 screaming, yelling, upsetting maybe somebody, you could be like, in a slower tone, in a lower volume, in a more controlled body language, express how you feel. Instead of pouring, or instead of dumping, you just pour. Still getting the same emotions out, but in a different way. And then if you're somebody who feels their emotions and wears their heart on their sleeve, and you just let your emotions drive you, maybe you can ask yourself, what do I really want? Taking out my emotions, taking out how I feel, what would be the best decision for me in this moment? And take a few deep breaths, because your emotions spin in your head. And I don't know if there's like scientific back up research that says this, but at least I feel when I do my deep breaths that it makes me stop, and it makes me think about, where am I, what do I want, and how to be objective. And the only way that you can have change emotionally and to mature is through changing the ways that you think. Because regardless of which area you lean upon, or even if you're in the middle of some of them, cool. You have to take the changes in stride. It's going to be very ugly in the beginning. Very, very ugly in the beginning when you want to take that initiative to change your emotional thinking, because you are not emotionally receiving the outcomes that you want. And it's hard when all your life you have been rewarded, whether it's through school, whether it's through monetary means, relationships, status, anything, that you have been rewarded by behaving and emotionally, like behaving and having your emotional maturity be at that level. And not to say that you're emotionally immature, but it's at the stage of always trying to develop yourself and to better understand your emotions. And what you kind of have to do is step away and ask yourself, what do I emotionally want? Do I want to feel my emotions? Do I want to slowly release my emotions? Do I want to try to better control my emotions? That's up to you. But regardless, the way that you feel your emotions and the way that you kind of pack them on top of each other, I guess is the only way that I can think about them, or like kind of like build upon your emotions and have you kind of decide. I imagine your emotions kind of like Legos that you build one after the other and yada yada. And that kind of formulates how you act and how you deal with hard things in life based upon your foundation. Maybe you have one in green, yellow, blue, a layer of turquoise, a layer of pink. But who's to say you can't build another layer in brown, or take off a few pink blocks and then put in some brown ones? And I guess just putting on those new blocks that are a different color that you're not familiar with is you trying to piece together emotional tools that you know will in the future help you, but in the moment challenge you. Because when you say, oh, I want to add a lot of brown blocks, you're like, oh, this is so ugly. I hate this building. It's so ugly now. Like, what am I doing? You just have to wait and continue building with those brown blocks. And then maybe you'll find some black blocks or some tan blocks. And then all of a sudden you've built this crazy looking museum from this part, which has all those colors, and then see that, hey, maybe adding these few brown blocks isn't that bad. But that takes a while to have that progress of seeing it come about. And the same thing is with our emotions, is that you kind of really have to, piece by piece, work with your emotions. And small things in life are going to be that, oh, this is so ugly part of looking at your building and seeing that this is hard, because you don't understand what you're building, but you're building yourself up. You are creating something that is helping you change emotionally. And it's the same thing But instead of externally going to the gym, going for a walk, daily movement, it's the daily movement inside. Sorry, that was probably loud. The daily movement inside of you challenging yourself, feeling your heartstrings pull, stretch, tear. And after you have that crying, that meltdown, that sadness, that control, that little bit more of control and trying to understand where you're coming from, those heartstrings come back together and they strengthen. Because have you ever cried and then the next day it's like, oh, those emotions passed. Those emotions were okay. It was okay to cry. It was okay to slowly tell somebody how you felt without having to worry about them exploding back on you. Or that maybe if I just take a few deep breaths, that maybe my emotions will calm down. It's all about trial and error. And I shouldn't even say trial and error, but rather just trying to better understand yourself and trying to evolve from what you were emotionally. Because you can't expect to have change in your environment internally if you don't do the internal work. And I think trying to really improve your emotions and the way that you are and the way you feel will help you see your external physical world a lot better. That you won't see it as much as a high stress. You won't see it as much as a burden. You won't see it as much as an overwhelming place to be, because you know how to regulate your emotions better. And it's hard. Regulating your emotions is like trying to turn on water. Oh my gosh, no. It's like, okay, at least at the different houses that I've gone to, that I've been in, and that the dorms that I lived in, the hotels, all their water faucets are different. If you turn one a quarter of a way, it's still freezing cold. But if you turn some an eighth, it's scalding hot. And so then you're oh shoot, ow, that hurts. Let me or burr, that's really cold. You don't know how to turn the dial. You don't really know how to control the water temperature. And then eventually, after staying there a few days, months, weeks, years, whatever, you know how to use the shower knob controller for heat. And the same thing is for your emotions, that sometimes you're gonna get burned. Sometimes you forget that when you see this person, you wanna explode. When you go through this really stressful experience, you wanna shut down. When you see so-and-so or feel or experience this, you wanna cry. But then when you experience those events again and again and again, they become familiar, and you know how to take control or release control or better regulate your emotions because you've been through it, you've done it. And I think that, honestly, this is super cliche, but I genuinely think that life throws you the same issue over and over and over again until you figure it out, but in different forms. That you will experience the same challenge in different fonts until you've learned a lesson, until you've learned how to move forward. Because some things in life you can only learn. You can be taught how to lift weights, you can be taught how to eat healthy, you can be taught how to drive a car. But no one tells you how to... Okay, let me rephrase that. You can be taught how to lift weights. Yes, okay. You can be taught so many things, but until you physically do it yourself, you don't know how to do it. You can be told, oh, this is the accelerator, push it down. This is the brakes, push it down when you need to stop. And you're like, okay, yeah, sure. This is a steering wheel. You know how to drive. Please turn the wheel left to go to left. Yes, you know that. But you don't know how to do that until you do it. You don't know how to drive properly without driving. And the same thing goes with your emotions. I can tell you, yo, stop exploding on Mark over there. He's having a crappy day. Don't do it. Just because you emotionally feel like you have to explode, don't explode on him. Because it hurts his feelings. You can be like, yeah, sure, I won't explode. But then you explode. It takes you to figure it out, how to control your emotions, just like it takes you to drive a car. It's simply just having the experience of life, of doing it. And it's hard. It really is. I don't know any other way to explain it other than it's hard. Because nothing in life that is worth it is easy. I do not believe that. I do not believe easy things come, or I should say, worthwhile things in life come easily. Because that's just not how it works. I don't believe it does. Maybe I'm wrong. And that's fine. But I want you to know to take a moment for yourself. Figure a little bit about yourself out of the style in which that you cope. And see how it is. And see what happens. And try to ask yourself, what are some ways that I can better become emotionally aware so that certain outcomes from my past do not repeat themselves? Because yes, I might have gotten the results that I wanted, but at what cost? And sometimes that cost is emotionally. And so just moving forward, you can really just try to navigate and track different ways that you are improving, but trying to become more emotionally aware of what you are doing, who you are, and who you eventually will become. Food for thought.